Keitech swim baits are one of the most commonly used baits to mimic a bait fish such as a shad. However, many of us just slap a hook on there and fish it without much thought. Today I'm going to unlock some of the secrets to fishing a Keitech type swim bait to help you catch more fish. So for me, there are three types of jig heads that I like to use on my Keitech swim baits. The first is a football head that works really well slow rolling across rocks on the bottom. The second is a pointed head, good for grassy situations. And the third is a ball head that gives it a good wobble while fishing for those suspended bass. Make sure you watch the whole video because toward the end I am going to give you a how to fish all three of these in extreme detail. Now I like to keep my weight system pretty simple. If I'm fishing 7 foot or less of water, I'm going to use a 1/4 ounce head. If I'm fishing deeper than 7 foot, I'm going to use a 3/8 ounce head. For the most part, I'm going to be either using a 2.8 or a 3.3 inch Keitech, but for the most part, I'm going to be trying to match the hatch. Sometimes on these swim baits, the subtle differences will make all the difference. So sometimes I'll put a little bit of dye on the tail of my swim bait and maybe a little bit around the head, just to give it a little different look versus the rest of the swim baits out there. For the rod and reel I like to use, for the most part, if I'm using a light wire hook like this one, I'm going to be sticking to a spinning rod that has 8 to 12 pound fluorocarbon or monofilament. And if I'm using something that's a little heavier hook, I'm probably going to put it on a bait caster. That way I have a little more force to set the hook and I don't have to worry about penetrating a fish's mouth. So for the beefier hook, I'm going to use a medium heavy rod, fast action tip. On the finessier setup, I'm going to be using a medium power rod with a moderate fast action tip. Hey, if you learned something from this video, make sure you subscribe to the channel and like the video. But getting into how to fish this bait, like I promised, the first one I'm going to talk about is the football head jig. We're going to fish that slow and steady around the rocks. We're going to cast it out, and then once it hits the bottom, we're going to drag it on the bottom a little bit. We're going to try to get our line going from a hump motion downward to either a straight or a hump downward motion. We want to keep that line as low as possible so when we do our slow retrieve, we're not pulling that bait up off the rocks. And by the way, this works a lot better if you fish from shallow to deep. It's easier to keep that bait down there because the bottom is coming up with you. Now I don't let this bait just drag on the bottom. I look for subtle ticks against rocks and stuff. And if I'm just dragging the bottom, I'll speed up my cadence just a little bit to keep it from having too much drag and potentially a hang up. So the second method of fishing here is if I notice that I'm getting a lot of bites on the fall and I want to repeat that over and over again through my cadence here. In order to do that effectively, I want to let the bait sink to the bottom. Obviously, if I don't get a bite on the fall, I'm going to lift it up and then I'm going to reel down and then just let the line fall right back down while watching my line. And I'm going to repeat that cadence. I'm going to let it fall all the way back down. Then I'll lift up one more time and I'm going to keep going. And just pay attention for those fish that are biting on the fall. And the third method is going to seem a little quirky to you guys, but I like to call it the pendulum method. And simply you cast out where you want to fish, you let it hit the bottom, you drag it a little bit to get the line straight, and then what you want to do is reel up 5, 6, 7 times real fast, and then let it fall. And it's just going to pendulum down towards you, and it's going to keep that bait in the strike zone for a very long time. And a lot of times you'll find that you get a bite right at the bottom because these bass like to pin the bait fish against the bottom, like the predators that they are, and it's a pretty fun bite. So for me, I like to fish the football head anytime fish are holding on rocks, which could be any time of year, pre-spawn, post-spawn, summer, and fall. So a lot of variety there. I like to fish, obviously, the pointed head around grass, so you have to have grass either later in the summer or in the fall, which, man, this bait really shines in the fall. And if I notice that I'm getting lots of bites On the fall of the bait, I'm gonna switch it up to the ball head because it has a really good wobble. Now these swim baits are really fun to fish and all, but if you're missing a lot of fish on your hook set, you may wanna check out this video where I talk about the secret timing of your hook set. But until next time, see you later, fishing fam.